Ever felt like something inside you has been pushing but not moving? Like you're pressing the gas and the engine is revving, but the road ahead feels strangely frozen? That sensation you've been carrying lately isn't weakness. It isn't confusion. It's timing. And on January 12th, the universe makes that timing impossible to ignore. Because Mars Retrograde begins. This is the moment when the planet of drive, ambition, desire, anger, courage, and forward motion appears to move backward in the sky. Astronomically, it's an illusion created by Earth overtaking Mars in orbit. But energetically, it's anything but an illusion. Because when Mars slows, the fire inside you changes direction. Instead of pushing outward into the world, it turns inward and begins asking questions you can't outrun. If you've been feeling frustrated, stalled, restless, irritated for no clear reason, or strangely exhausted, even though you haven't done anything wrong, that's Mars knocking. If conversations have been tense, if people have been pushing your buttons, if old arguments feel closer to the surface, if goals that once felt exciting suddenly feel hollow or heavy, that's not coincidence. That's the cosmic brake being applied. January 12th is not a random date. It is a hinge point in the year's energetic architecture. The universe runs on structure, cycles, phases. Nothing drifts without purpose. And when Mars goes retrograde, the universe temporarily says, stop, look, recalculate. This phase isn't about action. It's about restraint. The universe is watching how you respond, not how fast you move. Mars normally rules how you chase what you want, how you fight, how you assert yourself, how you go after love, money, power, recognition, and survival. But during a retrograde, the chase dissolves. The desire remains, but the direction becomes unclear. And that's where the real truth lives. Because when you can't move forward, you start to notice why you wanted to move in the first place. That's what January 12th unlocks. Most people think they know what they want. A relationship, a promotion, a fresh start, a new version of themselves. But Mars retrograde doesn't ask you what you want. It asks you why you want it. And the answers that surface during this period can be uncomfortable. Because sometimes we're chasing love to avoid loneliness, success to avoid feeling small, control to avoid feeling unsafe, recognition to avoid feeling invisible. And when Mars slows down, those motives can no longer hide behind momentum. If lately you felt like something you used to crave no longer hits the same way, that's not you losing your spark. That's your soul upgrading its truth. Mars retrograde is not punishment. It is a diagnostic scan of your will. It shows you where you've been forcing outcomes that don't match who you are anymore. You might notice delays, plans stalling, texts going unanswered, people becoming distant, projects losing traction, and your first instinct might be to push harder, to force movement, to demand clarity. But that instinct is exactly what this phase is testing. Because what Mars retrograde really asks is this: can you hold still long enough to hear what you actually want? On January 12th, the noise of external progress quiets, and the inner engine gets louder. Thoughts you've been avoiding, feelings you've been suppressing, anger you've been burying, regret you've been outrunning. All of it floats closer to the surface, not to hurt you, to free you, If you're in a relationship, this is when unspoken dynamics become obvious. Who's chasing who? Who's compromising? Who's holding power? Who's afraid to say what they really need? Mars rules desire, and when it retrogrades, desire stops being polite. It becomes honest. If you're single, you may suddenly realize you don't want what you thought you wanted, or you may feel pulled back toward someone from the past, not necessarily to reunite, but to understand the lesson that was never finished. If you're working, this is when career questions hit deeper. Not how do I get ahead, but why am I here? Not how do I succeed, but who am I becoming if I keep going? That's the energy of January 12th. It pulls the curtain back on your motivations. You may feel irritable. You may feel impatient. You may feel like people are slowing you down. But what's actually happening is something much quieter and more powerful. The universe is making sure you don't outrun your own alignment. Mars retrograde is the cosmic pause that saves you from building a future you'd eventually resent. There's a reason this is happening now, early in the year, before momentum gets locked in, before habits harden, before paths become harder to change. January 12th is a recalibration point, a place where the universe whispers, if you're going to move forward, make sure it's the right direction. And here's the truth most people never realize until much later. You don't get what you chase. You get what you're aligned with. Mars retrograde strips away the chasing. It removes the adrenaline. It removes the distraction. It leaves you alone with your intentions. And that's where the real power is reborn. So if you're feeling restless right now, good. If you're feeling stuck, good. If you're feeling unsure, that's not weakness. That's the beginning of clarity. The universe isn't delaying you. It's protecting you from a version of success that doesn't match who you're becoming. On January 12th, the fire inside you doesn't go out. It turns inward, and what it reveals will quietly change everything. There's a reason things feel different right now. Not louder, not more dramatic, just heavier, more charged, as if every thought, every decision, every interaction carries a deeper weight. That's what happens when Mars begins to pull backward. The surface story starts to crack, and what lies underneath begins to speak. January 12th didn't just shift the sky. It shifted the psychological weather inside you. Mars rules action, but even more than that, Mars rules intent. Not what you do, but the reason you do it. And during this retrograde, those reasons stop hiding. You may suddenly notice that things you used to do automatically now feel uncomfortable. A conversation that once felt harmless now feels loaded. A goal that once felt exciting now feels strangely empty. A relationship that once felt stable now feels misaligned. That's not because things are breaking. It's because they're being revealed. Most people live from momentum. They keep going because they've always been going. They chase because they've been taught to chase. They stay because leaving feels scary. But Mars retrograde interrupts that trance. It forces awareness. And awareness is where truth lives. You might be asking yourself questions you didn't plan to ask. Why do I keep giving more than I receive? Why do I feel unseen even when I'm not alone? Why do I keep pushing towards something that doesn't actually make me feel fulfilled? These questions are not random. They are activated by this planetary pause. Mars is turning the spotlight on your why. This is especially powerful in relationships. Mars governs attraction, conflict, boundaries, and power dynamics. When it retrogrades, old patterns come up for review. You may start to see who's been leading, who's been following, who's been sacrificing, who's been avoiding. The emotional subtext becomes obvious. If tension has been rising, that's not because something went wrong. It's because something real is finally being acknowledged. Things that were brushed aside now want to be named. And while that can feel uncomfortable, it's also the only way forward that doesn't require self-betrayal. You may realize that you weren't in love with a person. You were in love with the version of yourself you became around them. You may realize that you weren't chasing success. You were chasing validation. You may realize that you weren't angry at someone else. You were angry at yourself for staying silent too long. Mars retrograde is ruthless about honesty, but it is never cruel. It doesn't tear things down for entertainment. It dismantles illusions so you don't keep building your life on them. Career-wise, this phase exposes false ambition. Goals that looked impressive but felt hollow. Hustles that drained you more than they fed you. Roles that no longer match who you are. You may feel suddenly disconnected from something you worked hard for. That's not failure. That's your inner compass recalibrating. And here's the emotional mirror most people don't realize they're in right now. You're tired of pretending you want what you were told you should want. January 12th marks the moment when that pretense becomes too heavy to carry. Mars retrograde doesn't ask you to quit everything. It asks you to be honest about what actually fuels you, because motivation that comes from fear will always burn you out. But motivation that comes from alignment can carry you through anything. You may notice memories returning, old arguments, past relationships, missed opportunities, not to trap you in regret, but to show you what you still haven't integrated. The universe doesn't repeat lessons unless they weren't learned. This is the phase where anger often surfaces. Not explosive rage, but quiet resentment, irritation, that low-grade frustration that's been sitting under your smile. Mars rules anger too. And when it goes retrograde, suppressed emotion asks for a voice. Listen to it. Because anger, when understood, isn't destructive. It's informative. It tells you where a boundary was crossed, where a need was ignored, where you gave too much or took too little. The universe isn't punishing you for being human. It's guiding you back to your truth. And that truth, once seen, changes everything. This phase isn't about fixing your life. It's about understanding it. Something subtle has already started happening inside you. You may not have named it yet, but you can feel it. A strange slowing. A quiet resistance to pushing forward the way you used to. That's not laziness. That's not fear. That is the retrograde reboot activating. January 12th didn't just flip a switch in the sky. It flipped a switch in your nervous system. Mars is the part of you that goes, that pushes, that asserts, that conquers. But when Mars moves backward, that outward force collapses inward. The energy that once drove you to chase now forces you to confront. And that confrontation is where your real power has been hiding. This phase feels uncomfortable because it interrupts momentum. You may feel like you should be doing more, fixing more, pushing harder. But the universe is asking the opposite. It is saying, slow down so you can see. Because here is the truth most people never learn. Speed hides misalignment. Movement can distract you from dissatisfaction. Productivity can mask emotional emptiness. Mars retrograde removes those distractions. You might notice that things that once motivated you no longer do. You might feel uninspired by routines you used to rely on. You might feel strangely detached from things you once wanted desperately. That is not loss. That is clarity. Your inner conflicts are surfacing now because they are ready to be resolved. Old anger may rise. Old grief. Old frustration. Moments where you gave up too much of yourself. Moments where you stayed quiet when you should have spoken. Mars governs self-assertion, and when it retrogrades, it asks you, where did you abandon your own will? That question can be uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. You are not meant to be in constant forward motion. No soul grows under permanent acceleration. There must be seasons of reflection, and January 12th marks the beginning of one of the most important reflective phases of the year. This is when your spirit begins quietly rearranging its priorities. You may feel drawn to pull back, to rest more, to cancel plans, to be alone with your thoughts, to re-evaluate relationships. That instinct is not withdrawal. It is recalibration. Mars retrograde is a strategic retreat, not a defeat. In war, the smartest generals know when to pause, regroup, and change strategy. They do not waste energy attacking when the terrain has shifted, and the terrain of your life has shifted. What worked before may not work now. Who you were before may not be who you are becoming. And here is where many people make their biggest mistake. They try to force the future while their soul is still updating. Don't. This phase is not meant for bold new launches. It is meant for honest internal audits. It is meant for asking deeper questions. It is meant for understanding what truly fuels you. Because if you don't understand your drive will control you. Mars retrograde returns your power by making you conscious of it. You might notice more conflict during this time. Not necessarily loud arguments, but internal tension. A feeling of being pulled in two directions. One part of you wants to move forward. Another part of you wants to stop everything and start over. That tension is not confusion. It is the birth of a new alignment. Something inside you knows the old way isn't enough anymore. January 12th begins the process of stripping away what you thought you wanted so what you truly need can rise. And that process requires patience. The universe is not impressed by rushed decisions. It is impressed by intentional ones. So if you feel stuck right now, if you feel like progress has slowed, if you feel like life is asking you to wait, it's not because you're falling behind. It's because you're being positioned. This phase isn't about proving anything to anyone else. It's about proving to yourself that you can honor your own truth. The quiet choices you make now matter more than the loud ones later. This moment will make sense later. Right now, people feel different. You may not be able to explain it, but you can feel it in conversations, in the pauses, in the tension between what is said and what is meant. That's because Mars retrograde doesn't just work inside you. It works between you and everyone else. January 12th didn't just shift your internal drive. It shifted the emotional gravity between people. Mars rules attraction, boundaries, conflict, chemistry, and power. When it moves forward, relationships move on momentum. When it moves backward, relationships are forced to become honest. And honesty changes everything. You may notice someone pulling away, or you may feel yourself pulling back. You may suddenly see patterns you used to ignore. Who initiates? Who compromises? Who always gives? Who always waits? Who always controls? Mars retrograde highlights where desire and effort are not evenly matched. This can feel uncomfortable because it removes illusions. A relationship can only grow when both people are honest about what they want, but many people stay quiet to keep the peace. They settle for less to avoid conflict. They accept misalignment because they fear being alone. Mars retrograde brings those quiet sacrifices to the surface. You may realize you've been overgiving, or over-chasing, or holding on to something that no longer feeds you. You may also realize that someone else has been afraid to speak their truth around you. This isn't about blame. It's about clarity. Mars doesn't punish relationships during a retrograde. It tests them. And whatever is real will survive that test. If you're in a partnership, conversations may get deeper. Topics you avoided may come up. Needs that were buried may finally be expressed. This isn't because things are breaking. It's because the universe is giving you a chance to either realign or release. If you're single, this phase can feel especially intense. You may feel lonely one moment and strangely independent the next. You may think about people from your past, not because you should go back, but because there is a lesson still echoing. Mars retrograde pulls unresolved emotional threads forward so they can be untangled. You might even feel less interested in dating right now. That's because your energy is being called inward. You're being asked to reconnect with your own desire before merging it with someone else's. This is the emotional mirror many are standing in right now. You are realizing you don't want connection at any cost. You want alignment, and alignment requires honesty. Mars retrograde makes superficial attraction feel empty. It makes performative affection feel exhausting. It pushes you toward something quieter but more real. You may feel sensitive, easily triggered, quick to notice disrespect or emotional imbalance. That's not weakness. That's self-respect waking up. The universe is teaching you how to protect your energy without closing your heart. This phase isn't about cutting people off impulsively. It's about understanding what role they truly play in your life. Some relationships are here to grow with you. Others are here to teach you. And some are here to show you who you are not anymore. January 12th marks the moment when those roles become clear. If something feels strained, don't force it. If something feels distant, don't chase it. Let people show you where they stand. Mars retrograde reveals truth through space, not pressure, because what is meant to stay will not require you to beg. This moment will make sense later. There is a quiet unease many people feel right now that they can't quite name. It shows up as restlessness at work, disinterest in goals that once felt important, a subtle sense that the ladder you're climbing may be leaning against the wrong wall. That feeling didn't come from nowhere. It arrived with the Mars retrograde that began on January 12th. Mars governs ambition. It rules how you go after what you believe will secure your future. Money, status, stability, recognition. But when Mars turns inward, it doesn't ask how much you can achieve. It asks why you're chasing it. And for many, the answer is shifting. You may suddenly feel tired of hustling, tired of proving, tired of sacrificing your peace for external approval. That exhaustion isn't weakness. It's your soul asking for a more honest definition of success. Mars retrograde doesn't destroy careers. It exposes false ones. You might feel less motivated by titles, deadlines, or expectations. You might feel more drawn to meaningful work, creative freedom, or time that actually feels like your own. That doesn't mean you should quit everything. It means your values are updating. This phase is about realignment, not rebellion. Money can feel strange during this time, too. Delays, reconsiderations, expenses that force you to rethink priorities. Mars retrograde doesn't like waste. It pushes you to look at where your energy is being spent and whether the return is truly worth it. And here is the emotional mirror many are facing. You don't want more. You want enough in a way that feels right. January 12th marked the moment when chasing more started to feel hollow. The universe isn't taking anything away from you. It is clarifying what actually matters so you don't build a future that doesn't feel like home. This moment will make sense later. There is a quiet intelligence moving through the universe right now, and it is not in a hurry. Mars retrograde, which began on January 12th, has shifted the rhythm of time itself. Things may feel slower, heavier, more deliberate. That's not because life is stalling. It's because it is asking for precision. This is the phase where how you move matters more than how far you go. The old instinct is to push when things feel uncertain, to force clarity, to demand answers. But Mars retrograde doesn't reward force. It rewards awareness. It watches how you respond when control is removed. This phase is testing one thing above all else. Can you stay aligned when you don't know what's coming next? Mindful communication becomes essential now. Words carry more weight. Text, conversations, emails, and emotional exchanges can easily be misunderstood. Not because people are trying to hurt you, but because everyone is hearing through a filter of self-protection. This is a time to speak slowly, to listen deeply, to say what you mean, not what you think will be safe. Truth spoken with care has power. This is also a time to redefine what progress looks like. Progress right now isn't loud. It's internal. It's choosing not to react. It's choosing to rest. It's choosing to say no when you would have said yes out of fear. It's choosing yourself quietly. Mars retrograde rewards emotional maturity. You may feel tempted to burn bridges, quit things suddenly, or confront people aggressively. Resist that impulse. Not because you should stay silent, but because timing matters. The universe is giving you information right now, not asking you to act on all of it yet. This is the season of gathering truth. Conserve your energy. You don't need to prove anything right now. Let the unnecessary fall away. Let your intuition speak. Let your body rest. Let your spirit recalibrate. The more you slow down, the more you will see. This moment will make sense later. There's a reason this phase feels so heavy, so quiet, so strangely important. Mars retrograde is not meant to last forever. It is a passage, a narrowing of the road before it opens again. and what you discover about yourself between January 12th and the moment Mars turns forward again will shape everything that comes next. Because when Mars finally resumes its direct motion, it does not return you to who you were. It releases you as who you have become. Right now, the universe is rewriting the contract between your desire and your destiny. You are learning what truly matters, what you will no longer chase, what you will no longer tolerate, what you are finally ready to stand for. And those realizations don't arrive loudly. They arrive quietly, through stillness, frustration, emotional honesty, and moments of deep reflection. You may not see it yet, but something in your life is already realigning. People are shifting. Priorities are changing. Old dreams are dissolving. New ones are forming beneath the surface. This is the unseen work that happens before a breakthrough. Mars Retrograde is the season where the future is edited. And the most important thing to understand is this: the universe does not remove things from your life unless something more aligned is being prepared. The delays you experienced, the stalled conversations, the unanswered questions, the emotional turbulence, all of it served a purpose. It slowed you down just long enough to hear your own truth. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. When forward motion returns, you will move differently. You will no longer chase what drains you. You will no longer settle for what feels empty. You will no longer ignore your own needs to keep other people comfortable. That is the gift of this retrograde. What is being tested right now is not your strength. It is your integrity, your willingness to be honest with yourself, your courage to let go of what no longer fits, your patience to wait for what truly does. What should be avoided is impulsive action driven by frustration or fear. The universe is not asking you to leap blindly. It is asking you to listen deeply. What is quietly aligning is something more authentic than anything you've chased before. A version of your life that doesn't require constant effort to maintain. A path that feels steady instead of forced. And when Mars moves forward again, the energy that was turned inward will become unstoppable. You won't just want more. You'll want what's right. That is how real momentum is born. If this message found you, it wasn't random. You are exactly where you need to be in this cycle. Trust the pause. Trust the process. Trust what is being revealed. This moment will make sense later. And if you feel this truth resonating inside you, stay connected. Like this video. Subscribe to Celestial Insight. And remember, the universe always moves with purpose, even when it feels like it's standing still.